Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier. No, not Voldemort, not the guy in the witness protection system, not the Zapruder film guy. I've got a new mic. I've got the same mic. I've got the mic set up, a new computer that connects to the mic. Things are on the up and up. Lighting is not good yet in this room. There's no electricity. I'm doing the best I can here. But things in the background has been, in its mess. Oh, look, Eli Manning bobblehead. But things are on the up and up, Nick. I have the mic. That's the most important part. I saw so many comments yesterday about how the sound sucked because my mic wasn't on and Nick's was. Well, that is over now. Also, shout out to everybody in the comments. I had a great time reading the comments from yesterday's episode. A lot of freaking funny stuff. I was cracking up reading things about how it looked when the sun was going down in this non-lit room, and I was just fucking had my little like Voldemort thing going on. I should have wore like a sweatshirt with a hoodie on that day, Nick. But I'm happy to be here. I'm excited because, look, I'm not having visions of grandeur, like delusions of grandeur right now. I don't think the Giants are like a Super Bowl contender, but I really like what Joe Shane did, specifically on day 2 of free agency, with 2 specific signings with Holland and with Goson. And I really think that overall, the Giants have played this free agency smart from a contract standpoint and from who you're targeting, what age are they? And really, Nick, I look at it like this. The Giants have gone through multiple of these draft classes, Nick, and what's happened? They've come up just short on guys like Lassiter that they won in the draft. Oh, he goes 1 pick before. They trade down. 2 years ago, it was whoever it was. I forgot who the corner was out of Auburn. He goes 1 pick before. They trade down for Wanda. Last year, again, they get sniped. You can get sniped for your targets, and there aren't that many targets you have at the cornerback position specifically and at the safety position. So I'm happy they're going out and getting young players to fill their biggest need, the secondary. Because, Nick, I'm going to end it here, but I want to tell you one stat that just stood out to me about the Giants' last defense from a pass defense standpoint. The Giants' pass defense last year, 5 interceptions. We've talked about the bunch. 31st in the NFL. Quarterback rating against 103.2, 30th in the NFL. Completion percentage against 69.4, 30th in the NFL. Total points allowed 103, 26th. Coverage EPA 50. That was 27th in the NFL. Those are bottom 5 metrics across the board from a pass defense standpoint. And we know that before the Dexter injury in those first 6 weeks of the year, they were number 1 in sacks, but they still weren't a very good pass defense. They needed to fix this secondary up. You could draft it. You could have relied on the draft. Then they would have had to force some picks. But look at what happened last year. You can't just rely on young draft picks. They got 2 proven players that will come right in and start on their second contracts exactly where you want them. And you know what to expect you're going to get out of them. So I'm really excited about that and all the additions they've made. They're moving in the right direction. They went heavy on defense, Nick.
We know they needed to, right? The defense was so bad last year, and all those stats. Look, you just watched that team. You knew they needed secondary help. All the investments they made, other than Drew Phillips and Tyler Newman, the rookies from last year, you're like, oh, Deontay Banks, he's going to Cordell Flott, he's going to not really. Now they need to pay in free agency, and that's a byproduct of Joe Shane's failures and the failures of the New York Giants coaching staff to develop these guys. And that's also with the James Hudson III signing. The Giants have to go out and find a swing tackle because Evan Neal, they're kicking him inside, and Josh Azudu, he can't play tackle. These are all failings from Joe Shane, and you can label them desperation moves, but I am right there with you, man. I do not have delusions of grandeur about this team. I do not think the Giants are going to go and win all these playoff games and be a Super Bowl contender, but I think the team just got better. I think adding a guy like Golston to be your third edge rusher and a NASCAR package defensive lineman who can be a 4-eye shade or a 4 technique in Shane Bowen's wide front with Brian Burns on his side and then Kayvon and Dex on the other side. The center is going to have to go towards Dexter Lawrence. Now you have one-on-one matchups, or maybe they're going to have a tight end or a running back handle Burns, but you have that one-on-one matchup for Golston against a guard. And he won a lot of those one-on-one matchups when he was in those situations with Micah Parsons and with DeMarcus Lawrence over the last couple of years, especially in Mike Zimmer's system. And he's an ascending player, 27 years old, freakishly long, like 96th percentile arm length, 87th percentile arm length. I mean, 96th percentile wingspan, like 11-inch hands, like 10 7/8 inch hands, just freakishly long, freakish when it comes to those measurables. And you turn on his tape, a pretty damn good season. I like that. What is it? $6.5 million, 3 years, 19.5, 6.5 AAV. I think that is a value. You see guys like this get overpaid sometimes, and it's not like this is some superstar, and I don't want to make it like that, but as a third edge rusher, to give yourselves a different type of player at that position, a 6'5", 270 pounder rather than a 6'4", 6'5", 250. That's a big difference right there. And he can align again, inside, outside. So I really love that addition. And then Javon Holland was my number one safety going into it. I did not think the Giants would go out, and we'll address this here in a little bit. I didn't think the Giants would go out a year after allowing Xavier McKinney to walk and then sign Javon Holland to that deal. But I look at that deal and I say, judging by the safety market, he was my number one safety. There were safeties who got paid more than he did. I think that's a value too at 25 years old, somebody who has really good tape and was good in college. So from those two moves, man, I appreciated what Joe did, and you're making this defense more competent and younger.
Yeah, you nailed it, Nick. The key is get younger players. What have we talked about throughout this last year, however long it's been? It's the Giants don't have a lot of contracts signed on this roster. If you look around the NFL, the Chiefs, the Eagles, all those teams, they have dozens of contracts signed. The Giants don't have that. So in my opinion, what they did is give themselves a chance at 3 players. I'm going to leave it at that. We can talk, and we also have to talk about the linebacker special teamer they signed. Forget blanking on his name. Board, was it? I believe. Yeah. And then we'll talk about Hudson. We'll see. We'll talk about him in a little bit. And by the way, throughout the show, just give a little heads up. We're going to talk about all the signings from today that we missed from last episode. We're going to talk about an update on the comp pick the Giants received for losing Xavier McKinney in free agency. And then we're going to give a little update on the quarterback front from some things. By the way, please do us a favor throughout free agency and throughout the entirety of this offseason. Please like this show. Just if you're watching right now and you want to help us grow, we need you to hit the like button. There weren't a lot of likes in the last video. That's going to stop the video in the algorithm. So please hit the like button. And the comments have been amazing. Like, we need that. That's what really juices this algorithm up. But you guys are great on that front. So throw the comments in. Thank you so much for that. But like I was saying, Nick, before the little shameless promotion, I lost my train of thought for a second, but I was talking about, so we don't have a lot of contracts signed, but we're looking to build out a roster, right? That can be winning, that can help you win when you get that quarterback, whoever that quarterback may be. And to do so, you can find them through the draft, like we've talked about, Nick. It's been a rocky road, I think, for the Giants in that regard so far. They don't have a ton of guys from Shane's tenure yet that are guaranteed to re-sign. Maybe Kayvon, maybe a few others. Or you can sign guys who are hitting their second contract in free agency, like these 3. And if they play that contract out right, and Illuminor, I'll put in that as well. He's a little bit older, but I'm fine with that. You can then re-sign those players. Now they're part of your core. Those are the guys that you build forward with. I think there's a chance all 3 of these guys could get another contract from the Giants if things work out right. It's not a guarantee. I'm not saying that's the case. In my opinion, they have to hit on a quarterback. That's really what starts it, because then you're a contender again. And then you want to re-sign these types of players because they're part of your culture. They're part of what you're about. But they're young enough, in my opinion, that they can be guys that are part of the future, not just now. That was not always the case, Nick, during the Gettleman years. We had Kyle Rudolph type signings. We had Nate Solder type signings, older guys that you knew you were just getting that contract out of.
Yeah, and you also look at these contracts. None of these contracts are terrible, right? They're not going to cripple the Giants long term. But if you look at the roster right now and then compare it or juxtapose it with the roster 2 days ago, it is significantly better with Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland on the secondary. And then with Golston just adding a different body type towards the pass rush and somebody who can play the run. Look, he's not somebody who's going to anchor down against double teams and do all these things, but he can play the run. He's going to destroy a tight end because he's 270 pounds. So yeah, the defense just really solidified from that standpoint, and retaining Darius Slayton wasn't something that we all expected. I know we talked about that on the last episode, but retaining Darius Slayton, that's just another veteran presence on this offense that is saying, hey, quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, do you want to possibly come here now that we have solidified our defense a little bit more and brought in a veteran receiver who is well respected in this locker room?
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the point about Golston, who, again, like if you ask me, my 2 favorite moves so far in free agency are Golston and Holland. We'll get to both of them a little bit more later, but I love that you brought up his run defense, Golston. Among free agent defensive linemen in this class, Golston had the 4th most defensive stops with 41 last year. That's a lot of stops right there. And just for those who don't know, defensive stops are measured as plays where a run defender makes a play that's either a negative gain or I believe it's 2 yards or less. Is that correct, Nick? It's negative 0, 2 yards or less. So he is 4th most in the class to go along with 37 pressures and a career high 5.5 stacks. With a pass rush grade of 66.4, true set pass rush grade of 70.3, pass rush win rate 10.6. These are solid numbers for a player who has really ascended in the 3 years. He's 27 years old now. It's possible that he's reaching his prime. I think the same can be said about all of those players. We'll get into Holland now. Oh, sorry, you have something on that.
Yeah, no, it's just, dude, this guy has 84 and 3/8 inch wingspan. I know I brought it up before.
Yeah.
It's 96 percentile for one of
Freakish.
the longest positions. So what that does is when you can turn and you can use one arm and then you can get your feet underneath you, and he has the type of lower body flexion where he can absorb contact, get his hips low, bend at each joint, at his ankle joint, at his knees, get those knees low while also maintaining power and core strength to just lock out an offensive tackle. I've saw so many times on tape, and there'll be a video dropping soon of his tape where there are offensive linemen trying to get to him, but they can't because he's so freaking long and he's strong enough to anchor down in those one-on-one situations, double teams. Look, there are times where he is being double teamed and he's trying to just slip away, get to the half man of one, and he gets completely obliterated. I think it would be best if he would just be like, I'm getting double teamed, I'm going to anchor down, but that's also a schematic thing. I'm not 100% sure what Mike Zimmer, who is a penetrating type of defensive coordinator, was telling him to do. So I don't want to necessarily hold that against him. But regardless of the fact, when you have that type of length, it's going to give you an advantage if you make initial contact and you have those quick hands, which he has also displayed on tape. So I really do like that signing at that number.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, honestly. And just to go over some of those numbers again, we're talking about 37 pressures, 5.5 sacks, and the fourth most run stops among free agent defensive linemen. And I love what Nick said about his arm length and his look. What we've been missing, in my opinion, sometimes at the end of the line of scrimmage, is that ability to set the edge in a demonstrative fashion where you can take on that tight end or that tackle, whoever it may be. At times, Kayvon's done it. At times they've had to like shuffle in players, Jihad Ward, whatever it may be. This could be a player in my mind that can actually be a mainstay because you can move him inside, and I'm sure you'll talk about this a little bit in the film stuff, but you move him inside on passing downs, outside on run downs, wherever you want to play him. They needed a piece like this, man. They signed 2 defensive interior guys so far, or we want to call them an edge, whatever it may be, so far in free agency. Depth guys, Nick, we still want them to go heavy in the draft with premium picks if it's available to them. But this is what we need, dude. We need secondary, because that was not negotiable, right? Like, even though we've been along the path, you and I, of let's just start to become a team that invests in the trenches full time and the quarterback, we weren't really in that luxurious position right now, to be completely honest with you. With the secondary as it stood, we were not in that position. So let's get to that main piece they signed. Javon Holland, a lot of people thought he'd make 20 million AAV in this free agency, given the safety market. And I think if he was a free agent after 2023, he would have made 20 million. I think he might have reset the market. He had a little bit of a down 2024 for the standard that he set in 2023. The Giants bought low on that. I love that idea. We've always discussed on the show, progression is not linear. You can have you don't have to go best season 2023, even better 2024 to be better in 2025. You can go downhill for injuries or for new scheme. I mean, look, they lost Fangio, they brought a new scheme, and then go right back up to where you were, depending on the fit in the new system that you're in with Shane Bowen and the Giants. So they signed him for a lot cheaper than expected. And ultimately, he fits the bill, dude, of what we wanted here. It's funny how similar his profile in free agency, Nick, was to McKinney's last year, right? Like, they were picked around the same pick. I think he was 36 overall in the 2021 draft, Javon Holland. Very similar range where they were picked in, similar career trajectory even to some extent. And also somewhat of a similar player, at least in their usage. Like, he's somebody who had spent time in the box, spent time around the scrimmage over nickel and in the deep half. Like, the Giants can deploy him in a lot of different ways. I'll turn it over to you, but what I'm most excited about with this signing, dude, is what impact it's going to have on Tyler Nubin. That's what stands out to me. What will that allow him to do for us?
Absolutely. It's going to take some off of Tyler Nubin's place. This is a veteran presence who can do a lot of different things. I appreciate the signing. I'm eager to get into a full evaluation of him. I've watched some tape on Javon Holland, and I am intrigued. And I was intrigued when he was just doing his thing back in 2023 when he had that breakout season. Now, I've seen people, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. I've seen people be like, well, you let Xavier McKinney go last year, and this is only like 1.2 million less. Like, what are you doing? The way I look at it is, look, I think Joe Shane can acknowledge that might have been a mistake letting Xavier McKinney go. And maybe I put too much in not investing in premium positions. And maybe we should invest just in the overall team and not necessarily neglect some of these some of these non-premium positions, especially if it really is something that plays into the defensive coordinator that we have. Without Jason Pinnock, like, Jason Pinnock was okay. Not necessarily somebody you wanted starting. Like, we went through this season like, yo, Jason Pinnock, he's a player with a lot of upside. He has this opportunity ahead of him. Let's hope he seizes it. And to be honest, he did not seize it really in any situation, right? And Tyler Nubin was the one on tape that to me stood out. And even Tyler Nubin, somebody who had 13 interceptions in college, came away with zero. I think he had one PBU in that Buccaneers game against Mike Evans. So the Giants were just down bad from a defensive standpoint, and they wanted veteran leadership to help that young secondary with Drew Phillips and Tyler Nubin and Tay Banks, who took a step back. So they went out and they said, they probably shouldn't have let Xavier McKinney go. Let's go out and get a really damn good football player. So they did. 25 years old and at a value. And they also now recouped the 3rd round pick, which is pretty solid because it's like they essentially traded Xavier McKinney for Javon Holland and a 3rd round pick. It's one way to look at it. But I also just look at it from Joe Shane's perspective. I'm glad that he adjusted and he wasn't like, hey, I know how this will reflect in the media and how I could be a punching bag because of this decision, but this decision makes our team better. And this is a damn good football player. Let's go out and get him. And I would argue that they got him relatively at a value when you look at the safety market and some of these other guys who got bigger contracts than him.
Yeah, Nick, it's a loaded breakdown, and I'm glad you asked this so we can discuss this. I think it's fair. This is not my point of view, by the way. This is the devil's advocate side of it. I'm on your side, and I'll explain why in a moment. But the devil's advocate side of it is, Joe Shane, does he even have a plan? Last year, his plan was, I don't want to pay that kind of AAV for a safety. Now, his plan is this. It seems like he keeps flip-flopping and changing. Or the other side of it, as you broke down, is somebody who's proven that they can adjust, right? They can learn from their mistakes. The sunk cost fallacy doesn't help anyone. Saying, oh, we screwed up by not signing Xavier McKinney, now we can't possibly sign a safety, whoever it may be. That doesn't help anyone. That's not a good way of business. It's better to own up to your mistakes. And the mistakes I think he saw on film. Maybe he over-evaluated what Pinnock could be in this system. I'll be honest with you, I talked about it a lot in our film reviews. I thought Pinnock took a major step back last year in that system, and I thought he was a liability in their secondary. And I don't like how more was put on the plate of Nubin last year as a rookie. I'd rather have the Holland type player next to Nubin. So I think maybe he looked at things and said that. I also think, Nick, it's possible, and we don't know this and we'll never know this, that Xavier McKinney wasn't re-signed for other reasons. We all assumed, because we don't have any information on this, right? Like, Joe Shane's not going to tell us the truth. He's not going to tell anybody the truth. The media, whatever you hear is bullshit. But we assumed it was, he doesn't want to allocate that money, type of money to a running back, to a safety, right? Like, he's allocating money in different directions. He then went and just drafted a player in the 2nd round at safety, which kind of threw cold water right in the idea of that. Maybe that assumption was incorrect. Maybe the ATV accident. Maybe the comments about Wink and when the whole, maybe he was in the Wink camp type of thing. When that whole thing ended with Wink, maybe that was McKinney was part of that. We don't believe in him as a big leader in our culture and in our locker room.
Him and Wink were going at it too. Do you remember it was week 7 of 2023? I think it was after the Oakland or the Las Vegas loss. He went on, he said something publicly about Wink Martindale, and then Wink Martindale talked for like 6 or 7 minutes to the media, basically about that situation. It was like an odd thing that was going on when the entire Giants organization was burning right after Daniel Jones tore his ACL that season. So there's more than just the ATV accident when it comes to Xavier McKinney. Now, I know you and I, we really liked Xavier McKinney. We were open to retaining Xavier McKinney. He ended up signing that big contract with Green Bay. And it's like, all right, we're not going to allocate the money towards the safety position. But I think you're right, dude. That might have been us putting the cart before the horse a little bit and just making that assumption based on some of the comments Joe Shane has made in the past. But he didn't really directly say it, right? We were reading into it. But then the 2nd round pick with Tyler Nubin, and this makes me think maybe we read into that a little bit too far.
For sure. And I think that's the case. I don't know for sure. We're obviously just speculating. But ultimately, look, Xavier McKinney had an all-pro season, Nick. He was also in a different system than the Giants. Like, we don't know how it would have worked if he was in this system with Shane Bowen. I'm not crying over that spilt milk. Again, I consider it sunk cost. I'm just looking forward at Javon Holland, our safety, who's coming into the 2nd contract, was absolutely phenomenal in 2023. Could be argued that his 2023 in some ways is as good as what we saw from Xavier McKinney. That seems like a stretch with all the interceptions. And if you're just going by interceptions, I'm sure you can look at that and say that's a crazy take by me. But if you go by some of the other stuff, I mean, look, here are some of the numbers in 2023 with Justin Holland. He allowed a career best 5.5 yards per target, 4th best among safeties, 25, and that's 25 with at least 25 plus targets as the closest defender. A 57.1 completion percentage against when targeted, 10th lowest, facing at least 30 targets, and a minus 11.7 completion percentage over expected, 4th best among safeties. These are just some of the stats that kind of broke down his entire 2023. But it's not just that. Since he entered the NFL, Nick, he has a 91.3 coverage grade from Pro Football Focus. This is someone who can come down, play over the nickel, play in the deep half, and he's somebody you can trust in coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do really anything that you need him to do as a safety and still just 25 years old. Got him for what? The contract was, I believe, 45 million. Was that 3 years, 45.3 million? That's solid. I mean, Merrick signed for, I think, 51 million, right? If I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken. So you could say it's somewhat at a discount. I'm still like, it's not,
it is, honestly.
it's not an inexpensive contract, but Giant secondary right now, him, Tyler Nubin, Drew Phillips, Tay Banks. Hopefully you can get something out of him. And then Paulson Adebo. That's not a bad, it's not a bad secondary. And that was a huge, huge issue going into the draft. And now the Giants hopefully won't be making selections in the draft based on the holes, the many holes that they have on their roster. Look, this is not an ideal way to build a roster, right? You don't want to go out and just sign a bunch of people. But as Dan has said several times over the last couple of weeks, the Giants had no long-term contracts.
No option.
Money is not really an issue when it comes to the Giants. So you got to do what you got to do to improve the roster. And this was the quickest path to doing so. And look, I don't know much about these guys' characters or anything like that, but hopefully these guys can come in and they could be like more so like Bobby Okereke than Janoris Jenkins, those free agent guys or an Montreal role, right? Who can come in and they just go right into being New York Giants and they embody what it means to be a New York Giant. Hopefully that could be Holland, Golston, but and Adebo, but these are good football players regardless of that.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned that because this class reminds me in some ways of the 2016 free agent class. I was thinking about what is the closest to what I remember from this. And the Giants have actually spent a lot in this class. They've spent almost more than any single team in this free agent. They've spent the second most of any team. They've been big spenders in this free agent. Now they've all been young players. They've all been players on that second contract, with the exception of Roy Robertson Harris. So it's a plan that they put in place. And something you mentioned, by the way, the rebuilt secondary. On paper, I mean, they've made big investment in it, Nick. And I'm about to ask you a question about this, by the way, just to put you on the spot. I got an interesting question I want to get your take on. But 25, 25, 24, 23, and 23. Those five core guys in the secondary: Holland, Adebo, Banks, Phillips, and Nubin. No one older than 25. This could be a situation where if they hit across the board, Nick, and they develop within the system, we could be wiping our hands of secondary for the most part, with the exception of day 3 for a while, and allowing ourselves to focus on what I want us to focus on. Trench play, baby. Get those trenches up. IOLs, IDLs. Tackle. I'll take another tackle at some point, at any point. I don't care. Offensive tackle. Yes, I want one. I would never want to stop there. Same thing goes for edge. I don't care. You like an edge? Take an edge. I want to focus on things that matter. Eventually, maybe you and I will get our linebacker that we've been waiting for, like a day 2 linebacker, round 2 or round 3 that we've been waiting for at some point for Joe Shane or any of these GMs to pull the trigger on. But the question I want to ask you is this. I'm thinking back to some of what we broke down and what we discussed before last season when it came to Shane Bowen and his system. And some of what I remember when he was at his best was that he disguised some of the coverages pre to post snap, and you really used the safeties to win. Now, last year, Pinnock and Nubin, I don't think we saw too much creativity in my mind from the safeties on post snap basis. Now that he is Holland, now that he has Nubin entering year 2 in the same system, is this something we might see? Is there a targeted reason for going out and splashing on day 2 with a guy like Holland, who's unexpected and not in our plans? And is this system going to be predicated on what these two safeties can do in the back end?
I think so, but I also want to look at the totality of the 2024 New York Giants defense. You have a new defensive coordinator. And remember week 2, we were criticizing Shane Bowen for not adapting to what Cliff Kingsbury was doing in that Washington game. Now, there's a lot going on in that Washington game that led to that close, narrow loss, but one of it was just the horizontal passing attack and the depth the New York Giants were playing at. But we have to remember, the New York Giants is a new system. They were all trying to learn. They were all trying to adapt. You have, at that point, young players like Drew Phillips getting significant snaps. Micah McFadden was just coming back. So Darius Muasau getting worked in. I think at that point, Tyler Nubin was back and he was playing, right? So a lot of young moving pieces. And then by the time the system started to gel, you had an offense who was putting the defense out there the entire time. The defense rarely had a chance, other than the Browns and the Seattle game, the 2 games they won, ironically enough, to actually pin their ears back and play the defense that I think Shane Bowen wanted to play. And then towards the end of the season, Dexter Lawrence gets hurt and the Giants' entire system just, they're not able to really do much creative stuff with their safeties because they have to drop the safety in the box.
Right.
You have to have five guys on the line of scrimmage,
Good point.
7 8 guys, 7.5 guys in the box, whoever you really want to discuss it. So we never really got to see Shane Bowen do what he wanted to do from a safety standpoint. I think the safeties are imperative to Shane Bowen's system. You go back to his time in Tennessee when he had Kevin Byard and he had the other guy whose name is escaping me, Amani something
Hooker.
like that, right? Amani Hooker. When he had those guys, those safeties were very pivotal to what Shane Bowen wanted to do. And now you have Newbin. We know that he is a takeaway master. You have someone like Javon Holland who can do everything for you. I think your point does stand. Now, I just don't want to base it off of the 2024 tape because 2024 was a disaster, just like the 2023 season was a disaster, just like every season has been a disaster basically since 2016, other than 2022, which was the 1 year Brian Gable's first season. So yeah, I think we're going to see more creativity on the back end, and you can just trust that your safety and with another year under the belt of Tyler Newbin and Drew Phillips, that they're going to be where they need to be and that they're going to see what they need to see, which is very important for the system.
God, I love that point you made, though, about the end, because I remember watching the tape over those last few weeks when they had all those injuries. They got to the point where they're just, all right, we'll just drop the safeties and just do everything we can to stop the run. Whatever happens against the pass, happens against the pass. And Flacco's just like, all right, dude, I'll throw for 400 today if you give me that.
Exactly. Do you remember when we played the Saints? We're like, oh man, Alvin Kamara is going to have like 300 yards rushing. And he had like 60 yards rushing because the Giants were just like, we are going to stop the run. Beat us with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Just do that. Okay.
And there's a lot of negativity about Shane Bowen in the Giants fan base. And I think it's fair to actually consider the context, like you mentioned, the injuries, what that forced them to do in those final weeks, the early stages of any new system, like he had the first few weeks. And you can think about some high moments in Shane Bowen and his, short tenure with the Giants. That Bengals game, I want to look back on the tape of that. That's a high freaking moment for him.
It's a high moment. And again, man, all of this is married together, right? The defensive line, the linebackers, the safeties, everything. They all work together. It's a symbiotic relationship. When Dexter Lawrence is your only defensive lineman and you have to spell him, and Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden have so much on their plate, and the rest of your defensive linemen are just getting uprooted and double teamed out. And every time Dex isn't out there, the offensive coordinator is like, just run the football, AB, run the football, ISO the shit out of them. And the safeties can't really fit that well. It's going to affect the entire team. And then you're going to start selling out to stop the run. The offensive coordinator is going to see that. And then you're going to start passing and picking on Deonte Banks on the outside. And everything starts to fall apart because nothing is working. So strengthen the spine of the defense. One of the ways to strengthen the spine of the defense is to bring in these pass coverage guys to secure the pass. And then now you're going to have these assets to go out in a very deep interior defensive line class and draft some of these interior defensive linemen in the mid rounds to come and really strengthen that spine. And Goson also helps that as well. Robertson Harris, I hope he's more like a defensive lineman for him, and Nacho can like exchange snaps. But again, if the Giants are going to be good against the run from a defensive line standpoint, the starter more than likely is still not on this roster. I think the Giants will identify that in the draft and bring him in, and that will be the guy to complement Dexter Lawrence. Although I will say Golston can do that to some degree, but he is not a defensive lineman. He's still just a 270-pound edge who can kick inside in certain situations, in certain matchups.
And regardless, you want more bodies. You always want rotational guys up front. You want to be able to take Colston out. You want to take Dex out occasionally if you have to, more often than not, or more often you have, I should say. And they'll have two big opportunities, in my opinion. It'll be 3 and it'll be 34. There's a possibility they take Mason Graham at 3. I wouldn't be completely shocked by it. I don't think it's likely, but can you imagine this defense with Mason Graham, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, and Dexter Lawrence with the secondary rebuilt? I mean, we're talking about a serious on paper looking beast. Or you get what you get at 34, where there are going to be players that fall to 34 on the interior defensive line that are borderline first round picks that just made it to 34 based on the way that any draft shapes out. People need a quarterback here, people need a receiver here, a DB here, blah, 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 whatever it is. And these guys fall. So those are two prime opportunities. I even think with their third round pick, they may have an opportunity to get a guy who can play year one on the interior defensive line. So those are 3 spots, 3 big opportunities.
2 third round picks.
Yeah. Well, then we can talk about that now briefly. The Giants got a 3rd round compensatory pick for losing Xavier McKinney in free agency. Finally, this is the highest comp pick they've gotten in years. I can't even remember that one that was as high as this. 99 overall. That's a top 100 pick in a class where people say, what I want to have out of this class is as many top 100 picks as I can. They now have that pick and 105, their traditional 4th round pick at the top of round 4. very close in each other. That's a range you can get a Tyrone Tracy type. That's a range you can get a McFadden. This is just going from examples of us, but you can get Leo Chanel in that range. That's what the Chiefs did with a 3rd round compensatory pick. They took Leo Chanel, one of the best line inside, and he's been unbelievable for them. Absolutely unbelievable for them. And not the only guy who's been great in that range. So I'm excited about that pick, Nick. I'll say this back to what we were saying before. As an overall bow, I think, on what they've done so far in free agency, what they've done in the last few draft classes, and obviously the trade for Brian Burns. And one more thing, by the way, I mentioned 5 secondary players under 25. I want to throw Cordell Flott in that mix. I think he had some major improvements down the stretch. As the 6th guy, I'm going to throw him in that mix. He's still a developing player. Remember when the Giants drafted him, he was super young. I think it's an opportunity for him to take one more step this year. But with all that said, Nick, I'm looking at this thing on paper, dude. I don't really think there's any excuse for the Giants defense to not be pretty damn good, at least one of the 15 best defense in the NFL this year.
I know one way they can be.
Not stopping the run again?
Well, that of course, but it's the offense holding them back again.
Yeah, right.
The offense holding them back, and we just don't know yet. If it's Aaron Rodgers, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Agreed. If it's Russell Wilson, it could be a little bit of a problem. And if it's who knows at that point, right? Like if they don't land one of those 2 veterans, do you go Jameis? And then I think the Giants will just be like so in on either getting Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward at 3 or trading up to 1, which is an issue.
Right. Yeah. It's still that domino is the one that still needs to fall. But at least on paper, man, they've really done a lot with this defense. They've poured a lot of resources into it these last couple off seasons, and rightfully so. And I saw moments and glimpses of a really strong defense to be excited about last year. I referenced that Bengals game. I was at that game. That defense, that was an example of a defensive line dominating an offensive line and taking over a game. And it really looked that way. Burrow made some fantastic plays at the end of that game. They won that game. The Giants offense gave them absolutely nothing, dude. It was insane. One of the worst offensive performances I've ever seen, I feel like, from a Giants offense. And I said that a million times throughout the last 6 years. But
because a bad defense, too.
Against he came in ranked 31st in EPA, the Bengals defense. But that was kind of the story for the Giants defense before the injuries last year. Despite having a horrific situation in an offense that doesn't do anything for you, they kept coming on the field and leading the NFL in sacks for a period. Oh, I know you like that one. They were coming all over that field, man. Coming over it.
Off the rails.
They
were on the field, ladies and gentlemen.
They were lines on the field. But listen, I have expectations now for this defense. And I'll say this, like, regardless of where the offense gives them, because guess what? By the way, I mean, Russell Wilson didn't give the Steelers offense that much at times last year, and the defense still held their own. Regardless of what the offense gives them, if this defense is as bad as it was last year, Nick, Shane Bowen can't continue to be the coach here. Like, I think that's like the culprit at that point.
Of course, at that point, yeah. Now, the Giants also signed Chris Board. We touched on that just a little bit, and then we'll talk about James Hudson III. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Look, we all love to work out. The summer's coming around. You want to look good in your bathing suit. But in order to enhance your workout, you want to go and use MitoPure from Timeline. This is a great product. When I started using it, it makes me feel stronger, gives me more energy. I recover quicker. I'm in my 30s. I still have the energy to work out. And if you want that energy, you really should give Timeline's MitoPure a shot and work it into your routine. This, the great year of 2025, is your year to be the best, most energized, most revitalized you. MitoPure promotes cellular renewal and mitochondrial health to address common signs of aging at the root. MitoPure is the research-backed innovation that unlocks your fullest potential. Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure right now. So go to timeline.com/banter. It's timeline.com/banter. That's TIMELINE. So Chris Board started his career on the Ravens 2018 to 2021. He is a 6'2", 240-pound, 29-year-old special teamer mostly. I haven't gotten to his tape, but a lot of the Ravens guys that I respect said every time he had an opportunity to earn defensive snaps, he didn't necessarily let down. Now, the infrastructure is so much better over there in Baltimore than presumably it is here with the New York Giants. He was also with the Ravens last year, and he was with the Patriots in 2023 and the Lions in 2022. But all we're looking for out of him right now is valuable depth behind Micah McFadden and Bobby Okereke, possibly compete with Darius Muasau for snaps if any or either of those two go down with injury, and then just be that special teams guy that we need you to be. Just be the next. How many special teams guys have the Giants had where it's like you're basically on the roster just for this case? Go down the field, make those tackles, be a sure protector on punt coverage and all of that. So Giants added him as well, just one of those veteran signings that we needed to address. And then there's James Hudson III. This is a developmental tackle who used to play edge at the University of Cincinnati, made the transition to tackle, and spent 4 years with the Browns. I remember watching his tape at Cincinnati, and you liked how light he was on his feet, and there was all this potential. From everything I've heard, it doesn't seem like that potential has been actualized. When every time Jedrick Wills got hurt, he gets some snaps, gets some reps, and the Pro Football Focus stats weren't necessarily all that great. Everything I've heard about him, not great. Have not watched the film yet, but I will get to that in due time.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're betting on traits there. Obviously, they're betting on the quick feet and the hope that their offensive line coach, who did a great job with what he had to work with, I thought, last year for the Giants, can do better than what the previous offensive line coach did with him. We'll see. I don't think there's a lot of reps to go around. You get some reps in camp, you get some stuff in the preseason, and then you'll get thrown into the fire in a regular season game, as like he has been at times there, and he hasn't held up well from a great
how many times did the Giants last year? It's like, oh, if it wasn't Evan Neal, it was Hubbard, it was somebody, Josh Azudu, that they're trying to plug in. Now he's going to be one of those types of guys. An ideal situation, we'll never hear from him other than in the preseason. And
ideally.
Last year he played 222 total snaps, 159 of them were pass blocking, 15 pressures, 0 sacks. In his career, he surrendered 79 pressures and 9 sacks, over 886 pass blocking
Not great, Bob.
reps. And mostly he played right tackle, but last year he did play left tackle. So he has some versatility from that standpoint, which you need because, Andrew Thomas has been injured these last 2 seasons. But again, man, if James Hudson III is starting at left tackle at some point this year, it's probably not going to be a great situation. Thomas certainly needs to stay healthy.
I've seen some speculation, Nick, that Holland, this is kind of part of the Holland deal. They had the same agent, these two, Hudson and Holland. And it's not a conspiracy, but, it wouldn't be the first time there's kind of a little handshake deal. Like, why did the Giants get Holland for so cheap, Javon Holland, versus what the expectation was? Maybe it was a situation where they're negotiating that deal. The Giants were interested somewhat in Hudson. He's part of the peripheral of guys they need. I mean, look, they were going to take a swing tackle and they're going to take a rotational defensive interior guy and a rotational edge. Those were guarantees. Those are depth that killed the Giants last year. They didn't have any of those 3 positions from a depth standpoint. They got all 3 on these first 2 days. Now, as far as who they choose to be, we're looking at Hudson now as their choice for the swing tackle, I suppose, if you want to call it that. And at that price, he probably is, quite honestly, going to make this roster and be the swing tackle. Though I did see that if it doesn't work out, they can get out of his contract next year for just $1.5 million dead cap, which you don't want to think about right now. You want to think about, you're going to sign a guy. You hope it works. Like, you hope he can give you some value. But point being, maybe that played a role in it because they have the same agent. I don't know. I think the Giants are taking an opportunity and taking a chance. And I've said this before, Nick, and I will say it again because it's very important. Swing tackle is not a real thing. You can't find swing tackles in free agency. You can't just snap your fingers and hope that there's guys to go around to play swing tackle in the NFL. There's not even 64 good tackles in the NFL. Most teams don't have starters that are capable. And if they do, they're not hitting free agency for the most part. So this is the reality of the market. Tackle is dead in the NFL. There's not a lot of talent to go around. It's an insanely tough position to play. You don't really have time to develop. You develop under fire. And a lot of time that hurts your development. So it's a very fluid thing where, in my mind, Nick, like, the Giants have to seriously consider at some point drafting a tackle high again. I know it sucks. They just did it with Neal. It didn't work out, but it can't be a situation where they turn their brains off to it, because they turned their brains off to it in 2021. They said, look, we feel like we've done enough at tackle, and I want Matt Peart I drafted Matt Peart. That's what Gettleman said. I want Matt Peart to be our guy there. And it was a decision that led them to not even consider Rashawn Slater in round 1, from what I've heard. They were going playmaker no matter what in round 1. It's not just what I've heard. It played out in that exact fashion, right? They didn't get Devontae Smith. They were sniped 1 pick before. They traded back and just randomly took Kadarius Toney because he was a playmaker, and they needed to get a playmaker in their minds no matter what. A horrific way to draft anyway, just a terrible process all around. But point being, don't close your mind out to tackle. That's all I'm saying with this Hudson thing, man. Like, fine, hopefully it works out. I don't know if it will. There's not a lot of swing tackles that randomly work, but they need to really be considering this position as something that they need to take another swing at very soon in the draft, because that's the only place they're going to get it.
6'5", 313-pound, 25-year-old who signed a 2-year, $12 million deal with about $4 million in incentives, according to Mike Garafolo. So not an insignificant contract, right? Making about six-ish a year. I think it might have been upgraded or updated since that, but it's around those numbers I just listed that Garafolo initially said. But yeah, man, I guess if something happens to either of these tackles, like I could see it though, man. Like we're beginning of the season, something happens to Jermaine Illuminor or whatever.
Don't even jinx.
We're going to start talking about like Evan Neal possibly getting kicked back out there, unless Evan Neal's going to start at right guard.
Right guard.
Which he, I mean, that's the conversation, right?
Well, that like, should also be touched on, by the way, Nick. Something on that note. Apparently, according to Albert Breer, the Giants were big players in the Will Fry. Is it Fries, I believe, from the Colts?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, he signed an insane deal, dude, with the Vikings. Like, for a player of that caliber, this is what I said about, like, when Tooney hit free agency a few years back. Like, it's rare. Like, when you get those guys hit free agency, you should just get those guys. Because otherwise, you're paying $72 million or whatever it was for Will Fries. Like,
are you 88, bro.
What was it?
5 years. So it was 5 years, but 88 million.
88 million, 588 for a player like this. Like that is a bet. It is what it is. Like it might work out, but like
you got to look, man. The guard market is not great in the upcoming draft. So if you needed an interior offensive lineman,
that's
I think
shopping hungry though, and that's the problem.
It is shopping hungry, but desperation is going to force you to shop a little hungry.
And I'm glad the Giants didn't do that. I'm glad the Giants didn't beat that deal.
But I'll say this though, we're with pick 34, there are certain interior offensive linemen and possible offensive tackles who could be kicked inside, who the Giants may consider if they are that desperate. It depends. Like, how in were they on Will Fries? They probably had a number in their head, like, oh, we'll give him a 3-year or 4-year, $40 million or something. And then they're like, oh, wait, what are the Vikings giving him? Nah, right. So, like, we don't really know. Because this does seem like a lot for, again, I don't sit there and grind through Indianapolis Colts tape, but it does seem like a lot based on the skill set that experts suggest that he has. They say he's like a good player, but this is still a lot of money for him.
Yeah, this isn't good player money. This is top of the market, basically, type money. And that's the reality of the situation. Everyone's desperate for offensive line help at all times around the NFL. And these are the type of contracts that hit. So the rare times there is that elite player who hits the free agency market. Trey Smith, if he had hit this year, he didn't. The Chiefs somehow found money to sign him. Who knows how that works with the cap? It's a nonsense to me. It's just the Eagles too are just signing guys and re-signing guys, whatever on that front. But, you get that guy when they hit the market because it's rare they're going to hit the market. I'm happy they didn't sign this player. But I'll say this to your point, Nick. At 34, if there's a guy on the interior offensive line or on the tackle who they believe can be part of this future, you take him there. If you have the highest grade there, you take him there. This is a prime position for us to get a trench player at 34, whether it be defense or offense. I really hope that's the direction they go.
We have two more things we need to talk about, and they both have to do with the quarterback position.
Sure.
So there is the Aaron Rodgers. It looks like there's been reports. I can't find exactly who, that Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. It seems like the Steelers may be trending a little bit more towards Russell Wilson because they can't come to terms again.
So it was Dolak. Do you know who Dolak is? He's like He's a long-time beat reporter for the Steelers, and who knows what it is. But, first of all, I want to start by saying an article last night by Florio that came out, right? And I tweeted about this, Nick. That was, to me, the most agent-driven article I've ever read in my entire life covering the NFL. There was one direct quote that was like, well, it looks like the only way that he's like, the Giants can get back in on this thing if they make an offer that's out of the ballpark of what the Steelers are currently offering. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's such an obvious agent-driven thing that, agent speaks to Florio, whatever it may be. I'm not saying that's what happened. It's just my opinion of what happened. And then today, Dolak says, the Steelers might be in an impasse with Rodgers from a financial standpoint. This whole thing, the fact that the Steelers came into the picture because the fucking Jets had to sign Justin Fields and the Steelers couldn't just re-sign Fields, made this into a bidding war now between the Giants and Steelers for Aaron Rodgers, which is annoying because the Giants were going to get him at a pretty solid price. There was a time period where it was like, all right, Rodgers is going to the Giants because no one else really is in the mix. The Vikings got their thing going and they got their guys, and they probably don't want Rodgers anyway. The Steelers got Fields. The Jets are just going to tank it forward with Tyrod, which I don't even think is a tank personally. I like Tyrod, whatever. And there's no one really left except for the Titans and the Giants. And why would he go to the Titans? And the Raiders, traded for Geno. Now it's a bidding war, and who knows what's happening? Does Aaron Rodgers really care about the money? Does he just want to play for the team that gives him the best chance to win? I don't know, Nick. Does he not want to move? He just bought a house in Montclair. I don't know. I really don't understand. But I do know this. The Giants today, Nick, can give Aaron Rodgers something they couldn't give him 2 days ago. And that's
Yep.
we've put a lot of money into this team. We spent the second most so far in free agency. We've rebuilt this defense in our vision. We're going to give you a defense that we're not going to say right now it can be Steelers good, but we're going to try to. And on paper, it has a chance to be in my mind. And I'm serious about that. Looking on this team on paper, they have a sick defense, like on paper. And we'll see what happens. They have to come together. That's the next step. But we have that, and we have Malik Neighbors for you, and we have Andrew Thomas for you, and you don't have to move. And Brian Dable is somebody who you can hopefully get along with and see the field the same way as him and maybe unlock something, right? Like I think the way that Dable's system operates, it could be interesting for an arm talent like Aaron Rodgers. I kind of want to see how Aaron Rodgers operates in a system like that. So that's what the Giants have to offer. It's a little bit more than what they had to offer 2 days ago.
100% agree, man. It's hard to deny at this point. Now we're just playing that waiting game. But the other quarterback situation that we have to talk about is one Daniel Jones signing with the Indianapolis.
Let's get to that in a second. Let's talk about Russell Wilson too, because there's news on that.
Talk about Russ. That's where you thought I was going. Okay, yeah, we could talk about Russ. What's up?
Just because there's news on that front, because he's assumed to be, Nick, the fallback option for the Giants if Rodgers does sign with the Steelers. But there's another player in the mix, the Tennessee Titans, who are now negotiating and talking with Russell Wilson. And really, from a fit standpoint, that is one of the best places he can go with Callahan, with that run offense, with them just bringing in another offensive lineman, a lot of play action, basically a similar thing to what he had last year with Arthur Smith. I think it makes a lot more sense for Russ than Brian Dable. Like, I don't really want us to the only time Russ has ever really worked was like heavy play. I know he's like, oh, I'm getting mad at Seattle. I want to let me cook. But no, dude, you can't cook. You're not a cook quarterback, Russ. You never really have been. You never really used the middle of the field. You never operated really a rhythmic passing game. He was great when he was able to get under center, heavy personnel, run play action, and beat you with his legs and with his arm by creativity or just play action, take a deep shot. So, like, I don't know if the Giants want to go back to, I don't know if the Giants want to, I don't want to say go back, but operate within that offense, because that would be like essentially them. I don't know. It would be like going back to the 2022 offense in some ways. So maybe he's not as far up the Giants' priority list has been said. And that I'm curious about that. And if Tennessee Titans move on this, like what happens, Nick, if the Titans sign Russell Wilson in the next hour or so before Rodgers makes his decision? That changes things for the Giants.
It does. And I also want to know if the Pittsburgh Steelers are fully out on Russell Wilson. Right?
Sure. I
don't
like,
from
what I've heard, Wilson, they're not.
Yeah, if they're not, and the Titans do sign Russ, do the Steelers get a little bit more desperate to land Aaron Rodgers and maybe up the ante a little bit more, match what Aaron Rodgers wants, removing him from us, and that puts us in this position, the New York Giants, where we're like, guess we're going with Jameis, or do you like Jacoby Brissett? Oh no, we're trading up to number 1 to get the freaking number 1 overall pick from Tennessee. You just signed Russell Wilson, and we're going to secure Cam Ward. It just adds an interesting wrinkle, an interesting development into the Giants' pursuit for a quarterback in 2025.
Yeah, it does. And I think the Giants might shift their plan to Jameis Winston at that point if Russell Wilson signs and Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers and Russ goes to the Titans. At that point, it would be Jameis, I think, would be their next best option, unless you consider Cousins maybe. And then it kind of turns to the draft, you know? Do they trade up for Cam Ward now the Titans have Russell Wilson? Maybe. Do they sit at 3? That's what I would prefer to do. I think they might even I think there's a non-zero chance the Titans get called out on their bluff, take Abdul Carter at 1, the Browns connected to Shador, take Shador at 2, and the Giants can get Ward at 3. I don't think it's impossible. I've thought about it a lot. And I think that there's also a chance the Giants have Sanders and Ward neck and neck and like both, and they could just be like, fuck it, we'll sit at 3. We're going to get one of the 2. We'll call the Titans out on their bluff. I don't want to take the Titans. Like the Titans, if they're going to trade this pick again, I don't believe that they're going to take a quarterback. They're willing. No one does that. Like the Washington was not willing to trade that pick. They were taking Jaden Daniels. Like the Patriots were not willing to trade that pick. Yes, they started if an offer blows that way. No one said that. Speculation, dude. Like we don't know that for sure. We don't also know what was offered. We've heard the Giants and Vikings offered more than what's been reported, especially the Vikings. And I've also heard the Giants have. So like the Patriots probably were just not really listening. They were listening, but they were not. Like even in the Hard Knock scene, Nick, don't you remember what Elliot Wolf said to Shane? He's like, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll talk about it. Like, you know, reach out. Like, yeah, it was kind of just like, yeah, reach out. But we're taking a fucking quarterback here because we like Drake May. And so if the Titans like Cam Ward, there's no reason to even entertain trades in any serious fashion. So I just want to put that out there. But as far as the next point that we wanted to discuss that you brought up, which is Daniel Jones signing with the Colts, I'll say this, man. I don't think he could have picked a better destination for him. Some people said Minnesota, stay there, compete with McCarthy. I think Indianapolis is even better destination because I believe, one, he has a better chance to play there than he does Minnesota. Two, Shane Steichen runs a very quarterback-friendly system. And you could say Kevin O'Connell does too, but O'Connell's system requires you to play the quarterback position in a certain way, right? It requires you to really operate through the passing game. Steichen's system with Jalen Hurts a couple years ago when he blew up, and at times with Anthony Richardson, it doesn't require all that much drop back, scan the field, use your brain as a passer, and use your ability to find solutions. He's going to find ways to manufacture yards for Jones like he did for Hurts and like he did for Anthony Richardson, using his legs, using his ability to kind of get him on the move and do different things with his arm as well. So this is a good fit from a scheme standpoint. This is a good fit from a potential playing standpoint. Their offensive line is more stable than he ever had with the Giants, I think, with the exception of the first 5 games of 2024 this past season where the Giants offensive line really gelled and we had great grades across the board from a film standpoint, but it's stable enough there with the Colts, even after losing Fries. So this is a really good opportunity for him to do what he wants to do, which is play starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a smart move because Anthony Richardson seems to be on some shaky ground over there. And it's just it's funny that Daniel Jones might be starting games in 2024 and like significant games for a team that can compete for the playoffs because the NFC South kind of, or the AFC South kind of sucks.
And he's always had his best games in the domes, Jones, right? Detroit from his 2021 or 19 season, the 2 Vikings or the 1 Vikings game or both Vikings games, Detroit. He's better in a dome. The Saints game, remember that one? Jones is much better in a dome. Reason being, he doesn't really have an arm. So it's like his arm will look much better in a dome always. And he's just a better dome player. So I think that's a good fit for him from that standpoint as well.
I'm going to leave that one alone. But yeah. He does play well.
What, a better dome player?
Yeah, leave it alone.
The guy likes dome. Who doesn't? Who doesn't like getting in the dome? All right. On that front, what else do we have to talk about? Is that it?
That is it. We're just waiting for this quarterback news.
I know. I'm looking at my phone, dude, every 5 seconds.
I'm sure that it'll drop at a very inconvenient time for all of us.
Oh, of course. That's how it always does.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure there'll be more veterans. I was surprised. How surprised were you by the Javon? Like, I woke up this morning and I woke up before it broke, but I'm just doing my morning routine. I'm walking the dog. I check my phone and I see, I think Chef did tweet, Javon Holland signs with New York. I'm like, whoa, what? Are you serious? And then I was like, I really like that player. And I just didn't expect it to happen.
No one did. Yeah, I think they didn't expect it themselves. I think they kind of looked at it like, wow, he's still around day 2. The price isn't what was projected. Let's get this player. Let's get him in here right now. Let's bring him into the building. And you know who actually Pretty Ricky dropped that, or Ricky on Twitter dropped that like 6 hours before it happened. He's been having a hot free agency. So I'm kind of on the check with him. So like looking at his feed, trying to see if we got any Rodgers news on that front. Because again, I'll say it again. I know it's not the most popular take. I want Rodgers. I want to sign Rodgers, especially with this overhaul and defense free agency. I want a chance to compete this year. It's so hard to get a quarterback anyway. And if Ward is not going to be in the play, which is possible, right? The Titans might just take Ward at 1, and that dream is over immediately. In which case, I'd be happy we got Rodgers in that point. But either way, sign Rodgers, and you look a lot less desperate when it comes to the draft, and you could play the draft better because you actually have a veteran on your roster who could actually win you football games. And that remains to be debated, but I believe he can win games for the Giants if he signs. So we'll see. Until the next Big Blue Banter, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your patience during this overhaul of this freaking house. Thank you for patience with the microphone. Microphone's back. Leave a comment, hit the like button. Please help us grow the show. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.